Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest's life has been spent in teaching, writing, and editing. She published 7 books, including one on saving money while helping the environment, another on everyday activities to make our world kinder, one on helping people with disabilities cope with new parenthood, and a volume of poetry. She's a real California girl because she's a native. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Jackie O'Donnell.
Thank you for having me.
Jackie, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your book?
Okay. First of all, Nancy wanted to be here, but she's extremely camera shy. So she asked me to fill in for her. Nancy had one of those lives that has bits and pieces of turmoil and problems, one kind of after another, even from childhood, including an unstable mother and unfortunate marriage and so forth, which we cover in the book. And for about 2 years, she kept saying, I'd like to write a book because I think that people can learn from my mistakes and most of all, learn about how they can get through these kinds of things. And so we talked about it and I was just totally not really enthused. Now, Nancy is my best friend, but after a while, she was getting more and more interested in it, but life got in the way as usual, and we were both going through being primary caregivers for extremely ill husbands. So it kind of got put off. And then eventually she said, I really want to do this. And I was thinking, okay, how can we write it so that it isn't just a regular memoir where we start from the day I was born to the day I died. And then we came up with the message of, there are women in her life and in all of our lives who kind of definitely influenced her. So we call them the influencers. And so then all of a sudden we thought, we got it. Let's go for it.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never worked with a co-author before, and you and Nancy were best friends, and that's always touchy as well. It's like writing with a sibling, so
and we didn't kill each other, and we're still friends.
That's so great. Yeah. How did the process work for you? Was it more or less satisfying than writing alone?
It was different. I definitely liked the fact that we got together every 2 weeks and we set aside 2 hours every 2 weeks in which she would tell me about a certain segment of her life and we would share notes, and then we would go away and write and collaborate in that way. So that was good because I got to see her often, and because I had the ability, from my point of view, to be writing on my own while she's doing hers. So I had both. I had her and I had aloneness. So this is the first time I've ever tried to write with anybody else.
Very interesting. And I think it could be a great experience, or it could go terribly wrong.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we had a few disagreements.
Yeah. That's the way
mainly
most
over
of us
really,
do.
Yeah, mainly over really, really important items like, does a comma go there or not?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're both retired teachers.
Yes,
So
that
of
old
course,
Oxford
yeah.
comma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I'm dedicated to the Oxford comma.
Yes, I am too. Well, tell us a little bit about the title of this book, because you had another one that was released at the same time with a similar
No,
title.
no, actually, ours came out 6 or 8 months before Britney Spears did hers. Yeah. So, but the difference is that our book is the women plural in me, and it has a tag to it, how they helped me survive and thrive. Britney Spears' book is simply the woman singular in me, period. Unfortunately, uh, after her, we were doing fine with sales and stuff. And then she came out with her book, and now we are getting copies returned of our book returned and sent back to us because people are going through, I think they're going through and saying, oh, the woman in us, okay, let's compare prices at different places. And then they go back and they go click, and they click on our book instead of hers. We actually got our only 1-star review from a person who was extremely upset because she definitely ordered the Britney Spears book, but what she got was ours.
That's so frustrating because you
Yeah,
know
yeah, it
that she
is.
just clicked on the wrong one, and
Yeah,
that's very difficult because so many books have similar titles and people
yeah.
aren't very careful and they don't realize that the authors are be having to pay for returns.
Yeah, and we checked through to see if we could find another book with a similar title before we used it, and we didn't find it. And of course, Britney Spears has a lot more followers than we do.
Unfortunately, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Well, once y'all wrote this manuscript, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self publish?
Well, I knew that how expensive it was. We were kind of on a budget, 2 retired teachers. So we decided to self-publish, and we looked at a variety of places that we could self-publish through, found a lot of shady companies, but we finally found a place called New Book Authors, and they helped guide the process and did the final editing and got it all prepared and everything else. And then we went through Ingram Spark to do the actual distribution. So that worked out. That worked out pretty well. The people at New Book were very helpful, and by going through Ingram Spark, then we were able to get it into actual bookstores. They work with all the little indie bookstores, and be able to get it across the world. Our first sales were in France.
And isn't that remarkable how small our
It
world is? And
is. It
Ingram
is.
Spark does have a great distribution, and
Yeah.
I love the small presses. I'm with a small press myself, and I think we do receive more attention that way. Sometimes we all long for one of the big five and an agent and all of that, but then you end up with about 2% of the proceeds, and you still have to do all of your own marketing and promotion.
Yeah, or you can get somebody to do it and hope for the best. Or you can have a famous name like Britney Spears.
Yes. Well, if having her title out there would push sales to you and they would keep your book and love it, then that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, I know one person who got it by mistake and kept it. So that's something.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the big five and publicity efforts, we writers just love to write. We don't like to promote ourselves. Have
It's
you
hard.
two found challenges with that? Have you found anything that's worked for you, or maybe something you tried that didn't work?
It's kind of hard to tell what is being successful and what isn't. Now, where the first thing we did was to contact all of the small indie bookstores, and we got into a bunch of them that way and got be able to set up like signings and so forth. But then and we had friends push libraries so we could get them into libraries, and so we managed to get them there. Um, I'm a I'm a social media person. I do computers. Nancy doesn't. So I went on and got established on social media so that we do Facebook, but just personal, not a business, because I think that's more in keeping with the tenor of our book. And then I discovered TikTok, which I am not overly fond of. But then I realized that's because it's all young people there who haven't really lived long enough to go through most of the stuff that is in this book. And Pinterest, got something on Pinterest. And then what I do is I do a daily blog in which once in a while I will mention the book or something related to the book. And I have a book Twitter, or I guess it's an X now, whatever you call it. And so I do that. So, yeah. And I think that's getting the word around, but which of those is garnering sales, it's impossible to tell.
It really is difficult to know what avenues are bringing us book sales. And I think maybe a little bit from all of those areas. It all has to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, it does.
podcasts like this one, are
Mm-hmm.
seen all around the world and heard all around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people stumble upon podcasts they've never heard before, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been told that that's how they choose their next book, to read as they
Mm-hmm.
listen to the author talking. So you just never know what's going to bring sales to you unless you get a
That's
book
true.
bub deal. And then, of course, the expense of that is usually justified.
Right. Yeah. And we're, we want to make sales. We kind of have a mission with the book to get it in the hands of women that will be served by it, so to speak.
Yes, and I think once we get a book out into the world, it finds the people that it needs to find. I really truly
Yeah, I hope
believe
so.
that because I
Mm-hmm.
wrote my first book about adoption because I was adopted from a maternity home. And it's
Oh.
such an honor that people reached out to me from the adoption community, other adoptees, birth parents, adoptive parents, and they all told me that they were touched by the book. So when that happens, you just think, well, that was the reason that we wrote that book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And it does give you a platform, whatever you're writing about becomes your platform. Even though mine is fiction, it has a thread of memoir running through it. And
Mm-hmm.
it gives me, a way to speak to the adoption community. And so that's helpful.
That's neat. I like that.
Were there any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that improved your writing journey?
Um, just practice, practice, practice is pretty much it. I do participate in discussions through Facebook with various writers groups. And I've found some good suggestions there and been able to provide some. It's a nice give and take,
Yeah.
Kind of a writing family. So that's been good.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the passages you've brought to share today and then read so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Okay. Well, I have several short passages, like little paragraphs that I'd like to read. And that's to give a flavor of the tone of the book and the voice, actually the voice, because what I tried to do was the chapter when Nancy was really young, like 7 to 10 in through there, is in a more of a child's voice. And when she is dating after her divorce, it's kind of like the, oh, I'm free again voice, and so forth. This is in the chapter title, Brushes with Death. Slowly, fearfully, I crept into the kitchen. The gas smell burned my nostrils. It hadn't been on long enough to fill the room and spill out into the rest of the house. But its intent was clear. My mother was sitting on a chrome dinette chair, legs crossed at the ankles, her arms dropped down to her sides toward the floor, as if in submission to her impending death. She was only a little groggy, though, so I was able to turn off the gas and open up the windows, letting the breeze drive away the fog creeping over her. I held her hand and kept telling her that she'd be all right. After a few minutes, she was fine, physically at least. Our conversation a couple of weeks before that day flitted through my mind. She had been in pain and diagnosed with needing gallbladder surgery, prompting her to express her desire not to live any longer. Afterward, I wanted so desperately just to run away, to stop feeling responsible for keeping Mom alive and trying to fix what was wrong for her. Through it all, I battled my own huge need for control over both her life and my life. Later on, she met the man that she was going to marry, and this is when she was only 17. And chapter's called Romantic Interlude. 17, the age when love is the most important thing in the world. Well, at least having a boyfriend is, since all the other girls I saw around seemed to be floating dreamily while being glued to a boy. Naturally, I fell in love for the first time in my life. Better still, in the other girl's eyes, he was an older man, 6 years older than me. He was so gorgeous, with his athletic build, dark, touchable hair, ocean blue eyes that invited me to swim in them. Then there was that dimpled smile that made me melt. And could he ever kiss? No wonder that just shy of my 18th birthday, after he took me to the magical senior prom where he proposed to me, I gave him an enthusiastic yes. After her divorce, anybody who has been divorced knows that there is a period when you go, I don't want anything to do with that again. And then you get lonely. So Nancy ended up looking for love in all the wrong places. The first man I dated was just the relief I needed from all my stress. He was a very good dancer. In fact, he was very much a party person. I was ready for some fun. He liked driving to the ocean in his fully equipped, gleaming white camper. There, he would hike around the area and spend some time just chilling. We dated only a few months before getting engaged. Yep, I did it again. I jumped at the first relationship that made me feel good. Then I discovered that he had another girlfriend along with me. I didn't know if his girlfriend was in on this or not, but I came to see that he was manipulating me. He knew that I owned my own house and that I had a promising career with a steady income. Obviously, I broke up with this loser. Back to Parents Without Partners, onto the dance floor. There I met a man who made me laugh with his great sense of humor. More than that, he appealed to my budding sense of adventure. He had a motorcycle. It was a cool Harley. The reputation of Harley riders added to my excitement. I felt free, even a bit naughty, riding on the seat behind him, my arms wrapped around his leather draped body, my ash blonde hair blowing wildly in the wind. To the music of the Harley's distinctive low rumble, we rode with a group to Kings Canyon to hike the majestic redwoods. On that trip, he revealed his hippie side, especially his love for smoking weed. He kept pushing me to join him. He didn't like my constant refusal. Near the end of that trip, he broke up with me. Actually, he was just a half step ahead of me because I decided to break up with him. Even so, part of me felt rejected. That feeling quickly disappeared as I glanced over to the gnarled oak tree at his flirting while he smoked weed with another woman. He had already moved on. And this chapter is for the cat lovers. It's called Buttering Me Up. That's exactly what he did. Honestly, though, it didn't take much buttering up before I was utterly, totally in love. I don't know how I would have survived without him. As I'm writing this, I look down at my companion, my cat, Butter. He's in one of his favorite positions, sprawled out, belly up at my feet. We share as close a human animal bond as possible, which is quite a bit. Not all cats obviously allow themselves to love you or even acknowledge your existence, but Butter does. Those soulful green eyes looking up at me in trusting dependence assure me that I'm special, even if I am a human being. In return, I feel so much love for him that my eyes often sting with tears as I look at him. Throughout the book, well, actually, end of each chapter, there is a little section that explains how Nancy's influencers, who were her two aunts, her mother and her grandmother, how they influenced the different things that she was going through and helped kind of form decisions that she made, directions she took, and so forth. So I'd like to give you a sample of one of those. Where do my influencers fit into all of this? In amazing ways. All were strong women, each in her own fashion. All took adversity by the nose, swinging it around until it was tamed. My mother's example gave me power to stick out the bad times and emphasize the good. She understood that sometimes, because there are things you simply can't change, you find a way to live with them. Grandma's voice echoed inside me when frustration and tiredness made me irritable. Remind me to treat Ray with respect and dignity. Aunt Louise's gentleness rubbed off on me, giving me the ability to soothe those in pain. Aunt Irene showed me that if you truly love someone, you take joy in caring for them, and that when life gives you lemons, you throw them against the wall and say, take that. So that's a little bit of the book.
Those are great passages. And I have to say that there are so many similarities from Nancy's life to my own. So I recognize a lot of those times and situations.
Yeah, I think that's true for most women. If after we've lived for a while, then we do go through a lot of very, very similar or overlapping situations, which is, again, our mission to get to women to say, you are not alone.
It's so true. And we have now the vision of hindsight, and we can collect all that's happened to us and try to learn from it. And, you know, I do think that writing, getting our words down on paper is therapy for all of us.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
Do you and Nancy have any other books in you?
This was the first and last one for Nancy. She just had it living in her for so long and needed to get it out. She's an artist. She's so she gives me her paintings, and I give her poems that I write and so forth. But no, I don't think there are any more books. I'm keeping busy writing with the daily blog, and the blog itself is, I kind of call it social justice light, and it grew out of articles that I do called small things count. Oddly enough, that I write uh, for the Sunday bulletin for my parish. But that takes up a lot of time. And then with me, things will happen like just like something Nancy has to paint. It just kind of gnaws at her until she paints it. I'm that way with writing, and it's usually poetry, but other times it's these different articles that I see something in the news, and I got, oh, okay, now that is a good way to make this a kinder, more gentle world. And so that's the kind of things, and that's why I call it social justice light.
And we certainly need more of that.
We do. Yeah,
Well, this
definitely.
has been a great visit with you today, Jackie. And I feel like we've gotten to know Nancy as well through her
Good.
words and
That's good.
her life. So
Mhm.
thank you for that. And as
Well, thank you.
always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
Yeah, we've lived long enough to live through a bunch of stuff, as we've been talking about. And I would suggest that writers look to their past and look to their influencers, because we all have them. We just don't always recognize them, and kind of give them thanks and let them rise up within the writer, and write. Just write a lot. Yeah. Mhm.
That's great advice. And we do have all of those influencers in the past and in our present. And I
Mhm.
hope in our future that we'll just continue to be powerful women for us and help us to be the women that we want to be for
Mhm.
others. So we just appreciate your being here today. And now we're excited to count you among our authors over 50.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.